The problem was that I had my volume turned all the way down on my interface.
I stand by my messages to you.
When you said, "What the fuck is your problem, bro?"
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a solid one. I want to share something with you real quick before we start. Is that cool?
I love sharing.
All right, great. Have you heard of the shopping cart theory? I
have not.
So it crossed my path the other day. It looks like it was posted in 2020, May of 2020. But as a retail professional, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. It says, the shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing.
Interesting. Okay.
To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task and one which we all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. To return the shopping cart is objectively right. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. You gain nothing by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal. Jesus, okay, this is, just so you know, this isn't my personal opinion. But
I have actually heard this, by the way. I didn't realize what it was.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Is no better than an animal, an absolute savage who can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with a law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a person is a good or bad member of society.
Well, I can tell you, as someone who works in retail, during COVID, we've been doing lines outside. And especially in the first, 4 or 5 months.
Just railing lines of Coke right outside.
Yeah, we're just doing lines of Coke right outside the store. That's how we cope. That's how we cope with COVID. No, but like the first 5 months especially, people, they walk their carts back to us. They would always walk their carts right back to us. Like we basically didn't need to do cart runs for the first 5 or 6 months of COVID because everyone brought their carts back. So I think they felt so guilty because we were standing right there, outside, cleaning the carts and stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's anything, but I will tell you now it's gone back to a healthy mix. You have certain people that walk it back and people that will just let that shit roll right into someone else's car.
No, I think you got your finger on the pulse there, that it was actually that they were being watched this time.
Yep.
And they felt bad. You could call it a conscience, you can call it guilt, whatever, got the better of them. And that's what led to them actually returning it.
Yep.
But I could see that, and it made me look at myself as a different kind of person too, because for me it really depends. Most times I will return it if I'm alone, but if I'm with somebody else, I feel as if I'm inconveniencing them by taking the time to return it.
Right. If there's a cart corral, I will always I'll put the cart in the car corral for sure. But, where I work, we don't have one because the county won't let us put one in the parking lot. So, if you don't return your shopping cart, you're just literally letting it roll because it's on a hill too, the parking lot. So almost no matter where you put it, unless you actually kick it up onto an island with the front two wheels, that shit's going to roll into somebody's car. And it's just simple as that.
Listen here, all you fucking civilians, all right? If you listen to this conversation, you heard it first, all right? From somebody here. Unless you return the cart, someone's suffering somewhere down the line. So whether it's another person's car or somebody who works
That's right. There. My car was hit by a shopping cart, and I worked there, so.
Oh my God, I'm sorry that happened to you. I never knew.
Yeah, it fucking ruined my car actually.
Tell you what, we'll do you a favor. You return your carts, and we'll return the theme. Here it comes. Welcome to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. Brother Booch, a.k.a. the pseudo-intellectual soy boy. And in my second seat, as always, is my co-host, Brother Ty.
Hey, what's up?
Not much, Ty. This episode has been brought to you, all of these technical difficulties have been brought to you by Altice One, the apparently the shittiest cable provider and internet provider there is. I've heard they make a good cell phone network, though, so at least there's that.
Hey, they got something going for them, then.
Yes. It's amazing to not have good enough Wi-Fi, reset the router, have no Wi-Fi, and then not be able to Google the problem because your mobile provider that you also... I'm not with them through mobile. I've heard they're good, though. I'm with Sprint, and then I didn't have a good signal where I was, so I couldn't even Google how to handle the problem. So
what did they do back in like the 80s and 90s? You know what I mean?
Yeah, when their Wi-Fi went out in the 80s, I could only imagine.
Just couldn't even Google it. God.
Exactly. But yeah, so this episode here is going to be one of 4 episodes that are specific to Black voices and Black experiences, which, we cover throughout the podcast.
We do.
We did in Watchmen, we did in Lovecraft Country, but since it is Black History Month, and while you and I are aware of Black history all the time, and apparently a chunk of America is only aware of it in February.
Yes.
So before we get into the movie that we are reviewing today, can you tell me a little bit about Black History Month?
I can. So Black History Month was started by Carter G. Woodson. He was known as a father of Black history. He developed Black History Month. His parents were enslaved. He was an author, historian, and the second African American to earn a PhD at Harvard University. He recognized that the American education system offered very little information about the accomplishments of African Americans and founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, now called the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. In 1926, he proposed a National Negro History Week, which is intended to showcase everything students learned about Black history throughout the school year. But it wasn't until 1976, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, that President Ford expanded the week into Black History Month. And that's kind of the history of that. So we'll definitely have an article in the show notes showing that. But yeah, so Woodson came up with the idea to highlight, Black history, and eventually in the 70s it finally became, nationally recognized.
So where you and I are like, I can't believe, Black history just isn't a part of the curriculum year round. This guy's like, hey, I'm lucky I got a month. They gave me a week, and I multiplied that by 4 and turned it into a Black History Month. So, no, I didn't know about the inception of Black History Month, but I am glad to know that it was a Black man who, had a very personal experience and attachment to it. And, I think that what started out at the time as like something that was great, so that way the mainstream could learn more about Black history. We are at a point now where I think it should just be more commonplace in all of our teachings.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a huge victory for the time. Obviously, it was a huge victory for the time, but with civil rights and all that, and really getting it out there for white folks to know, and I think for Black kids to learn their own history a little bit too. And, I think it's important to recognize it still today. But, I agree with you. I think, we need to recognize it all year round. But, hey, I mean, if it gets some white people to stop and think for the month and watch some Black entertainment and, learn some history, then I guess that's still a victory, right?
Hey, I'll agree with you on that one, Ty. So today's movie that we are reading between the lines of, and I don't think there's a lot to read between. It seems pretty in your face, It
is.
But and for the better, I'll say. I'm not opposed to it at all. But yeah, so today's movie is One Night in Miami. This is Regina King's directorial debut. Did we talk about Regina King at all before, Ty?
Well, yeah, because she was in HBO's Watchmen. She was actually the main character in that, Angela. So we have discussed Regina King quite a bit during those HBO Watchmen reviews, and it's cool to see her kind of branch out from acting and take on directing a little bit.
Yeah, and in this Christmas, another movie starring Regina King and a bunch of other awesome, amazing Black actors. She whips her husband with a belt for cheating on her and treating her like shit.
So interesting.
there you go. From an outside perspective, like, I mean, I understand cheating sucks and all, but that she literally committed assault. Like she put baby oil in the on the bathroom floor as he got out of the shower, so he slipped on it multiple times, and then she whipped the shit out of him.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Well, he assaulted her feelings.
Idris Elba's her brother.
He assaulted her feelings.
That's right.
So she assaulted his body.
That's right. At the end of the movie, they do like a Soul Train dance, all the actors. So, it's cool. Like, everyone's fine. It was all good. But yeah, so One Night in Miami was originally a play that was written by Kemp Powers.
Right.
And after being adapted and made into the movie we're discussing today, this was the first film by a black female director that was selected by the Venice Film Festival. So
wow.
What a showing for Regina King, and her first movie. So I'm definitely down to see her direct more. I'm down to see her act more. I just like Regina King. I like her in those car commercials. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard sometimes to adapt a stage play to film. They have a very specific feel to them. This movie is it's four guys, right? It's four guys in a room for the majority of it. So you definitely feel where the stage play aspect of that kind of comes in.
Oh yeah, you feel it big time. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. So but I think it's a testament to her, skills as a director already, that she's able to translate that for the most part pretty successfully to film, and obviously getting the right actors to portray these roles, and make it interesting, an almost 2-hour film that keeps you invested of just guys talking.
Yeah, I mean, keeps you invested throughout most of it. Depends on who it is. We'll talk, because we're not only are we going to discuss about the themes, which I really enjoyed in this film, but I think there is also a technical and film aspect to discuss it. But before we do that, let's throw out the spoiler warning. It's coming in the distance. Everybody can hear it right now. For those of you who have not yet seen One Night in Miami, it is currently streaming on Prime Video. Once again, Regina King's directorial debut. Watch it. Watch it before you listen to the rest of this podcast. It'll the time. I was gonna say the time will fly by, but I can't make that guarantee. But it is.
It'll keep keep you interested. It'll definitely pique your curiosity about these fellas.
It certainly will, as you get entrenched in the plot, which Ty is about to give you.
One Night in Miami, a fictional account of one incredible night where icons Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown gathered discussing their roles in the civil rights movement and cultural upheaval of the 60s.
Yeah, so this I've had a lot of time to think about this movie since I saw it. I had some time to digest it. You need time to digest a film, and this it really got me thinking. Like, these are people who were at the height of their respective careers, maybe not necessarily at that point in the film. I don't know their specific ages, and I'll speak to whatever history I do know of these individuals, but I do not consider myself a scholar on any of them.
Right.
So obviously there will be there will be sources in the show notes, but but I may not be able to speak on their entire character, because most of what I know has been seen through random clips and quotes online and this movie.
Well, I mean, two of these guys were dead before we were even born, and another one has died since. So it's unfortunately we only know what we've been able to read or learned in school or watch, like you said, clips on YouTube or whatever it might be. So we know as much as we can, I guess. But they're all, like you said, they're kind of at the peak of their careers, or at least beginning to. I think in this film, we have Muhammad Ali, who's still going by Cassius Clay, and at this point he is just he's about to fight for the world championship at 22 years old. We have Sam Cooke, who's kind of taken pop music by storm, and he just plays at the Copacabana for the first time. We have Malcolm X, who has been at the front of the civil rights movement and has been fighting for black people to have their rights and to be able to live for quite some time now. This is really towards the end of his career, I would say. We're getting close to his assassination at this point. And then we have, Jim Brown, who is played in the NFL and has been very, very successful. So, and he's starting a movie career. So, like you said, these guys are, they're 4 black men who have all really made a name for themselves. And that's kind of a big part of this film too. They discuss kind of how they made a name for themselves and, how they use that platform, to get their messages across. So.
Dude, well said. I love it.
Thanks.
I want to talk about Cassius Clay for a bit. And, he and Malcolm X I probably know the most about. And even then, I don't know that much about them. So,
agreed, yeah.
Obviously, stuff in the show notes. Check it out. But Cassius Clay, while he was fighting for the world championship at 22, which is considered to be amazing, he won an Olympic gold medal at 18 for boxing.
That's unbelievable.
Which later ended up at the bottom of a river when he was refused admittance into a restaurant because of the color of his skin. So we talked about it in the Chadwick episode, where even if you are a celebrity, if you are a person of color, race is a part of your story. So early on, race was a part of all these individuals' stories, and obviously it becomes kind of the focal point of the film. Cassius Clay also, like you said, 22, became the champ. Later on, went by Muhammad Ali after he joined the Nation of Islam. He had refused to fight in Vietnam later on in his life, which they stripped him of his championship. And you know what? When I was writing that down, it got me thinking a bit about how, like, Malcolm is very much about people using their platforms to advance the black cause as much as possible, and I guess kind of making a sacrifice while people are laying down their lives intentionally. Most times it's otherwise, for the cause. And so later on in his life, he really did take that to heart. And while this is this is historical fiction, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X were actually very close in real life, and I don't doubt that this conversation came up multiple times. But for somebody who made their way through boxing, for the championship to be the most important thing in your life, and then to give it up because you refuse to go fight in Vietnam, I think that is a huge sacrifice to make.
Yeah, I mean, obviously being a fighter is really important to him. Knowing you're going to lose that, but standing up for your values, refusing to go and kill people in another country, for a country that doesn't respect you as a human being, I think it's a powerful statement, and one that I know people bring up all the time about him. And I think, nowadays it's obviously much more favorable outlook, right? Because I think people look at Vietnam and say that was obviously a mistake. We shouldn't have been there. That's pretty well recognized these days. Obviously Muhammad Ali is considered more heroic for that today. But, then he was ridiculed. And like you said, he was stripped of his title. So it was a ballsy move on his part.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. government made Ali's life a living hell. They were constantly trying to put him in prison because he was, quote unquote, draft dodging. And he actually ended up finally spending 10 days in prison years later, and I think it was for a traffic violation.
Wow.
But they kept going back and forth. While they were, I believe at one point while they were looking into his case, I might be getting this mixed up with another case, I'll admit that. They looked into Martin Luther King's assassination, and they found that the FBI had been illegally tapping his phone. So when they talk about the G-men in this movie, like, that is very real for someone like Malcolm X. It's kind of random, but kind of not, because it's part of Ali's story as well. But eventually all of the charges were dropped, or accusations. There weren't really any charges. There were accusations. They were lifted, and later on in his life, Bush Jr. Gives him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he became like a national hero, which is what we see now, but we never see it publicized as to how the U.S. government fucking hated Muhammad Ali. He was like, he became a militant member of the Nation of Islam, and he was Africa's hero. Like, they loved him too every time he went over to fight there. Nelson Mandela was like his biggest fan.
I mean, Malcolm X was his mentor, right? So, I mean, right off the bat, you got to know the government hated him, right? Because they're following Malcolm around. Yep. they're keeping tabs on him. They consider him like, almost a terrorist. And then he's mentoring this kid. So that probably didn't, set the tone for him being loved by the U.S. government too well in the beginning there.
No, he was definitely on the radar right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he also ended up having a speaking series. He was going to colleges after they took his boxing career away, and he was speaking on issues of race and his ideology. So he definitely had a very storied career. He later came back to boxing, but that when we're talking about Cassius Clay, when we're talking about Muhammad Ali, there is a whole history of activism and sports that has been followed since then by we talk about Kaepernick, LeBron James, a bunch of athletes who are now also being treated like shit. People are like, oh, you should shut up and dribble, blah, blah, blah. Like, guess what, man? History doesn't change, does it?
Right.
Like,
right.
They did the same shit to Muhammad Ali. And, imagine, how many years down the line are they going to be like, LeBron was a hero for civil rights. Kaepernick was a fucking, now Kaepernick's he's getting all these endorsements and stuff. I want to say now, it's been like the past couple of years, he's finally like getting some popular attention, but still.
Well, that's a big argument in this film, right? That Malcolm X brings up is like using your platform for that, and like you said, we've seen that, time and time again. It doesn't change. Like you said, we've seen Colin Kaepernick use his platform.
You don't have to swear off of it. You said Kaepernick every time. If that's how you say it, it's how you say it, man. I'm just saying.
He uses his platform, to bring about, attention to racial injustice. But if you watch a Michael Jordan documentary, for example, Michael Jordan was asked to actually help, like send money or at least endorse. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but he was running for office. I think in either South or North Carolina. He was a black man. He would have been the first one elected, and he chose not to because he didn't want to get involved in politics. So you see this kind of this debate.
So that is an option.
Yeah, time and time again where people choose, either to use their platform, and they can often be ridiculed for it, or they can keep their mouth shut, and have their career be successful because, white people just want them to do their sports and do their entertainment and not bring politics into it. How many times do you hear that, right? Don't bring politics into this. So it's an interesting debate. It's an interesting debate.
Now, speaking of this debate, let's go on to Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke was originally a gospel singer, and like you said, he took the pop world by storm at the time this movie is taking place. He was playing at the Copacabana. The media at the time noted how this was like a big deal for him because he, not only did he bomb the performance, but this was like his first chance to win over a white conservative audience.
Yeah. I mean, the way it's portrayed in the film, at least, they really are, like, they're just not ready to even give him a chance, The manager of the Copacabana is very rude to him, won't let him even have, I think, his guitar player out on the floor with him, and then he gets out there and the crowd is just obviously, not interested. People walk up and leave, and again, he does bomb the performance. It's not great. He doesn't wow anybody with it. But, I can only imagine the pressure. He says, I grew up wanting to be here, right? Like, this is my dream to come here and perform. And you have all these people that don't have any interest in you, your talent, or you even as a person. And now you got to perform and entertain them. It must have been a lot of pressure.
I can say firsthand from doing stand-up comedy, that does not feel good. He's probably had a bunch of nightmares related around that one experience.
Probably.
That's what happened.
Probably.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. So I didn't know anything about Sam Cooke. So this was like kind of what I thought was my first introduction to him. However, let's flash back. I'm in college. I think I want to be a teacher at this time. I'm putting together a unit plan, and it's about resistance songs. It's about like protest songs to, for students to learn how to, how entertainment is fueled by, wow. Now all the pieces are really coming together now. But for children to learn how entertainment is fueled by the social conditions under which it's created. So one of those songs was A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. And as soon as he started singing it, I was like, that is Sam Cooke. I had no idea. But
that's funny.
But this whole movie is more or less about about, well, not the whole movie, but a big part of this movie is about how Sam Cooke does end up writing A Change Is Gonna Come. It's not that way in real life. There was another individual, and you'll see it when you check the show notes, who brought attention to the Bob Dylan song.
Right. Well, in the movie, he says he already started writing it. He just hadn't performed it yet.
Oh, so I guess that was Power's way of kind of putting that into the story.
Yeah, I think the way this movie plays
why
out,
he was writing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Malcolm X talking to him is kind of the inspiration to finally perform it in public, I think. Or maybe even Jim Brown, because they have that conversation, where he asks about the song. But yeah, I think, the movie does say that he had already started writing it.
Now, what do you know about Jim Brown, the football player?
Right. So, I didn't know a whole lot about him before that. I heard the name before. I knew he was a football player. That was about the extent of my knowledge. But yeah, I mean, he was obviously, he breaking barriers by being in the NFL. He was, some considered him the greatest football player in the world at the time. And, racism was very, very much still alive. But, one thing I've learned about white people, from my own family, even personal experiences, they love a black athlete. When they don't say anything about their situation, they just play sports. But like, they really love a black athlete, and that's kind of interesting to me. It's amazing, like just how like, they can say the most racist things, but then they'll put on the football game and be cheering for for a black player. It's kind of like, wow, that they don't even realize this, but. Yeah, I mean, we have this.
Let me go back. Sorry, let me go back to Sam Cooke for just a second. At the time, we're talking about, he wasn't the only black musician who was rocking the world and topping the charts. So at the time, we see that at the time and now that white people absolutely love what black people create, the way they entertain them, the way they make them feel. They don't want black people to have any agency, but they love being entertained by them.
Yeah, I mean, Malcolm X actually brings that up later on, and I'll talk about it later.
He says something a little more.
Okay, yeah. But I had an interesting conversation with my girlfriend about it, so I'd like to bring that up as well. But so the movie opens for Jim Brown where he's visiting this white man. I guess it's like a plantation home or something, right? And like they go out in the porch, and his I guess the white guy's granddaughter's like, oh my God, it's Jim Brown, like you're amazing, you're this amazing football player, and she's so like starstruck, and she gets her grandfather, and he comes out and sits on the porch, and they have some, they're drinking, and I think they have like tea or something.
They have
sweet tea, maybe.
They have a nice rapport, the two of them, too.
Yeah, I think
a nice rapport, mentorship. And
the white guy even mentions how their families have looked out for each other since they first came to
quote
this
unquote
land, right? He's like, we got to help each other out, and he's like, you're doing an amazing job. He even says to Jim Brown that he's like a hero, right? Like he's a testament to the state of Georgia. He's just such an amazing figure, and he's so proud of him. And
he really does build him up so much.
I know.
That's what makes this pay off so well.
Yeah, and it's like you're like, oh wow, this is so nice. They're getting along great. They're having this really nice conversation. Then the granddaughter reminds her grandfather that she needs help moving a piece of furniture. He's like, oh right, I forgot. And he gets up, and Jim Brown's like, oh, let me help you out with that. You got to move a piece of furniture. Let me help you. And the white guy turns around and goes, we don't allow N-words in the house. And he's like, keep up the good work.
And he says it with the hard R.
He does, which I'm not going to do. But yeah, he says that, and it just kind of like, it shocked me. And imagine being a person of color in that situation.
Yeah, like, how do you even... I guess, like, the dude felt so comfortable to say that because it was just casual. He didn't say it with any malice behind his voice. Like, oh, we don't allow blanks in the house.
Yep.
And that was it. And he was like, anyway, keep up the good work. Like,
it was just a matter of fact,
was a way
right?
of life. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, how can you be so nonchalant about it? And he walks away, right? Doesn't feel like he hurt his feelings. He's just like, whatever. And I think even pats him on the chest, like, keep up the good work. And then he walks away. And I think that's when you realize that, like, no matter how great, you might be or how talented you might be, you're only as good as what entertainment or what you can provide for these people, for a person like that. They don't view him as an equal. They just want to see him play his football and that's it. He's not even allowed into the house. And the anger you see on Brown's face is it's pretty It's pretty horrible, you know. And listen, Jim Brown is not. He does not have a perfect history. I was doing a little research on him, and he had a sordid history of criminal accusations. He was accused of rape.
Well, criminal accusations are okay, yeah, like sexual assault allegations. Because every black man has criminal accusations against him, but these are more than that.
Yeah, he was accused of rape. He was accused of domestic abuse. He apparently choked and beat his golf partner. He attacked.
Well, what was he shooting? God damn it! Were they under par or?
Yeah, right.
Sometimes you gotta beat and choke your golf partner.
That's right. You know, he damaged his second or third wife's car. You know, he had I think like 7 or 8 allegations throughout the years from like the 70s all the way to 1999. In which case he got off on almost every single one of them. I know his first wife, he wound up having to pay alimony and child support. No, nothing big there, but any other charges were dropped. I think the only thing he served, I think, like 1 day in prison or something for choking his partner, and then he got like community service for attacking his wife's car and stuff. So he didn't wind up. Yeah, he didn't get the book
days than Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, but he was acquitted of a lot of that, and he had an autobiography come out where he apparently explained a lot of that. But obviously. Without being there, you don't know what happened.
What you don't understand is that I was mad at my wife, so I hit her.
Yeah, well, he claims like apparently he was accused of like assaulting his girlfriend or something, and he's like, yeah, she made that up, which led to the how did he put it? He was like, which led to the mistake with the police where he assaulted a cop. So it was like, all right, but
I thought you said that in there. So the only thing he's done that I wouldn't condemn him for.
Yeah.
No.
Probably, right?
Back then. But celebrity is very powerful. Like, that's what I was talking about. Like, the fact that a black man could assault a cop and get away with it. The fact that he could have all these allegations against him and, quote unquote, get away with it. That, like, celebrity and class still speak volumes, even if you are a person of color. Like, even if things are already against you, money speaks. Money talk. Oh, they have a saying that says money talks, actually. So I'll use that one.
There you go.
And last but not least, certainly not least by any stretch of the imagination, we have Malcolm X. And I will say that with Jim Brown specifically, but all of these actors, I really think they brought it home and did a great job. Like, I really think like they are the way into this film. They are the reason you go see this film, is to see how these actors portray these characters.
Yeah, and I think like the film was a play, right? So it's very dialogue heavy. It's very performance based. And I think off mic we talked a little bit about it. Like there's times where it's a little over the top, I think. But I do think part of that is just the dialogue, but for the most part, like, you get some really powerful performances from these guys. And Malcolm X in particular, I think, gets some really, really heavy dialogue, some really, difficult monologues that he has to deliver. So, it's a heavy task, but I think for the most part, they all kind of are up for the challenge. And you have 4 really, really talented actors here.
Yeah, Malcolm X in this film is definitely charged with like carrying everything, and he
without him you don't really have a story, right? Like he's kind of pushing the momentum here.
He's like the one connecting everyone.
Yep.
Now, in real life, though, a lot of these individuals ran in the same circles. Like, right. Muhammad and Malcolm were close, obviously. Jim and Muhammad Ali were in the same circles. I don't believe they were that close, though, but it just happened to be that they were both, great athletes, great black athletes. And, Sam Cooke, I believe he was close with, I think he at least knew X.
Right.
But the whole conflict between him was put in by Kemp Powers, and that came about from his struggle as being the only black writer on Star Trek Discovery. Oh. So that conflict between Sam and Malcolm is actually his own internal conflict. Like, how much of yourself do you insert into the show? Do you try and keep it real like Malcolm did, or do you try and sell and beat them at their own game like Sam Cooke was doing? But yeah, Malcolm is charged with pissing off every character in this movie, sometimes even himself. He, for those of you who don't know, you really better know. But like Ty said, Malcolm X was at the forefront of the civil rights movement. He was known as the more militant of the civil rights leaders. He had a speech called "Ballot or the Bullet." He was able to disperse thousands of Nation of Islam members with just a gesture of his hand when they were fighting to free one of their brethren who had been brutalized by the police.
Right.
Like he became that powerful of a leader, and he was a powerful man, a powerful orator. Really committed to his ideologies, and that's as far as I know him. I didn't see the stuff that came before that. I have to watch the Denzel Washington movie still.
There you go.
Where he goes to prison and finds Islam and everything. But
yeah, I mean, he's a devoted, Muslim, and he, he's in the Nation of Islam. But the film is picking up at a point where he actually is going to leave the Nation of Islam, which was incredibly bold in and of itself, because once you're in it for life. And he disagrees with the leadership there and decides to start his own sect of that.
Did you do any research on Elijah Muhammad?
I didn't do much on him. No, unfortunately I didn't. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, because in the video I was watching about, now I didn't do much research either, but in the video I was watching about Muhammad Ali, they did mention that one of his big costs, which is why he needed money. He ended up selling his name to a burger chain that gave him stock in $900,000 for calling themselves Champ Burger. But at one point they said that he had given a lot of money to the Nation of Islam. So I'm putting that together. I'm putting it together that in this movie they're alluding to Elijah Muhammad pulling some R. Kelly shit, pulling some cult leader shit. We see that they have very intense security here. They have a lot of rules. The FBI follows everybody. It doesn't matter. But Malcolm X, his home is taken care of, his car is taken care of, his hotels are taken care of, everything taken care of by the Nation of Islam. Because as Jim points out at one point in the movie, X doesn't actually have a job. He is there being the mouthpiece of the Nation of Islam.
The way it felt to me was he wasn't so they're protecting him, but they're also keeping him prisoner, right? They're keeping tabs on everything he does.
Keeping watch over him.
He never has a moment to himself. There's someone at the door. Someone follows him to the phone booth to call his he is, and he clearly is kind of, I think,
suspicious.
He's bothered by this. He even says to the others at one point, I don't get to pick him, the people that are with him. So, he's assigned these people that are going to watch over him, and it felt very much like he was being kept prisoner.
Yeah, even later when one of the security is talking to Jim and Muhammad about his transition, his converting to Islam, he says oh, well, I wish I would have done it earlier, blah, blah, blah. We could have stopped this one kid who was whooping my ass at school and everything. And then Jim's he's like, well, then why don't you join a gang?
Yeah, he's like, you don't have to join them.
Yeah, he's like, what's the difference? And so that I got strong Scientology vibes. I can't speak as to anything involving the Nation of Islam. I know Islam as a religion. I studied some of it in college. But as far as that specific group,
I mean, my understanding is they're kind of extremist, and they kind of they use violence, I guess, when they need to, and I think a lot of people do know that towards the end of his life, right, right around when he left the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, made the pilgrimage to Mecca, and that changed his viewpoint on a lot of things. And I was actually, talking to my girlfriend about. She actually knows a lot about, her best friend is Muslim, and she knows a lot about the religion. And she was telling me a little bit about the pilgrimage, and I think it's called Hajj. And basically Muslims from all over the world go there, and everyone has to wear the exact same clothing, right? So everyone is wearing the same outfit, and you don't know who's rich and who's poor. You have people of all different colors and backgrounds basically coming here to make this pilgrimage and do the same thing. And it's very unifying. It makes you kind of really feel close to each other, and it really separates those boundaries that we normally have, of color and race and all that. So I think that was that was very eye-opening for him too, Malcolm X, towards the end of his life, because I have an article here too that we could put in the show notes, but basically discusses how, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were worlds apart in their ideologies, and they only very briefly met in their lives. They were not really associated with each other. But when Malcolm died,
except by everybody else still.
Now when Malcolm died and when Martin Luther King died, their ideologies were almost the same, because Malcolm started to slide the other direction and Martin Luther King started sliding towards that direction. So they wound up meeting kind of in the middle. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to remember, and Malcolm X gets a lot of hate for being this, this violent person, but he wasn't necessarily, talking about, murdering and killing people. He was just talking about defending, himself and black people defending themselves.
People.
Yeah. And I think he started to see things in a different way, and how we could come together. And I think, realizing if white people and black people weren't pitted against each other, we might be able to rise up and kind of beat the people that profit off that, right? And it seems that whenever somebody tries to unite people, that's when they die, right? It's always when they try to unite people, because I think they want somebody there as a form of conflict, right? It's probably in the best interest of the U.S. government to have someone like Malcolm X.
Yeah, you need controlled opposition,
right? Yep. You keep people fighting,
and I think that like the Malcolm and MLK worked very well, because there were two brands of civil rights, and you had to accept one or shit was going to get bad. So, like, they went for the lesser of two evils in MLK, right. And even then, still, fucking wiretapped the guy and assassinated him, tried to get him to kill himself. Yeah, so it does behoove them, as it still does for the class war, right? Yep. We should all be rising up against the 1%, but because, I'm red and you're blue, I'm right, you're left, well, we are always at each other's throats, which is great for the powers that be.
And this is what happened to Fred Hampton too. It's just, you see it every time.
Like I said, I was getting some pretty strong Scientology vibes, and I think when you do talk about individuals being quote unquote extremists, depending on who you're asking, because when we were discussing Rogue One, we talked about extremists, but yeah, I think once Malcolm kind of got out on his own, a lot of that militancy might have been left behind. When Muhammad Ali was speaking on behalf of of Nation of Islam, he's coming out against race mixing and stuff like that, which I want to talk about mixed marriages real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it does seem extreme from a certain standpoint, right? It seems extreme to say Muhammad Ali is against white people and black people being together. He is against integration. He's pro-segregation. That is technically racist.
Right.
And I thought about it. As this past year has had a lot of introspection, especially if you've listened to the podcast, as I learned more about my own heritage and the, the Taínos of Hispaniola, and how, it wasn't just the the Spaniards who came and made them whiter. It was also, their own leaders who were put in place later on. Like, they specifically wanted the Dominican Republic to be as white as possible. And then comes my father, later down the line. No, he was actually the next step. It was Columbus. Hispaniola became the Dominican Republic. Then my father was born right after. But my father, who is noticeably, like, he was pretty light when he was younger, but still he's noticeably a darker man. He ended up with a white woman and made me. And so now I'm thinking about it. I really don't have a lot of at least physical attributes that still go back to my heritage. If I get a tan in the summer, you can see. If you see my hair grow out, you can tell. Or if you see me dance, but that's about it.
Right.
And I'm thinking I've married a white woman. So if we do have kids, I'm inadvertently contributing to that colonization of my ancestors.
Right, because now your kids are going to have even less of those traits, right?
Yeah, I'm whitening my own children. And I don't know. Obviously I love my kids regardless, and I love my wife regardless. She's one of the good white people.
You're going to have to break up with your wife, man. That's all. You're just going to have to leave her.
Anyway, it just got me thinking. I don't necessarily have a pro or an anti stance, but I was like,
I mean, he definitely has a point, and whether it's right or wrong, it gets you thinking, right? And I think that's been a huge problem for, especially here, in the United States, of people losing their heritage, to white people, and it's happened for hundreds of years, and you know, it definitely. I could see why that would upset somebody. You know, it's hard to hold on to those roots if you keep, you know, kind of diluting it more and more.
Now, when you're talking about an ideology that might not be right or wrong, but sparks discussion, let's talk about the crux of this film is when they get into it. All four of them kind of have their own way of advancing the black struggle or helping the black struggle. They don't all necessarily see the other. Mostly it's Malcolm being mad at everybody for not doing exactly what he's doing. And we've discussed that a lot, too, on and off the podcast, you and I. What brand of activism is quote-unquote correct or quote-unquote most effective? Like, you know, this movie and our conversations have shown that there isn't necessarily one definite brand. You know, we have Sam Cooke, who I loved his example because he's talking about how, like, yeah, like, you know, there are, you know, I'm entertaining white folks and singing pop music and not singing about the black struggle, but also I'm selling songs that are going to get covered by white people and the white dollar is coming back to me. Yeah, so, you know, he's, you know, go back to the Yellowstone episode, right? He's beating them at their own game. He's doing some rainwater shit. Like, learn their game and beat them at it. And Jim Brown isn't too far off.
No, he's not. And you know, Malcolm even says to Cooke, he's like, you know, you think you're being corrupted, like where you're living, and he's like, you can't even go into Beverly Hills. And you know, Cooke's like, we have our own Black Beverly Hills, and we have the better view. You know, like he always seems to find the silver lining in how Black people are able to actually come out on top, right? By kind of using white people's own, you know, prejudice against them. And you know, Malcolm obviously doesn't see it that way at all. And I know you mentioned, you know, this movie, a lot of it's about Malcolm kind of coming at everybody, but I think it's important to note, you know, this was as he's getting ready to leave the Nation of Islam. He knows Hoover's people have been following him, right? He even says at one point, his lackeys have been following me around so long, they know where I'm going to be before I do. So he's very on edge. You know, he has a feeling that he's going to be killed soon. He sees people following him.
And he needs celebrity support, too.
He does, and he's even got an autobiography in the works. You know, he never trusted journalists before, but he knows that his time is almost up. And so I think he's on edge, and he knows that he doesn't have a lot of time to push these guys forward and to get this movement where it needs to be. So, you know, he comes out a little extreme maybe and a little angry at his friends, but you know, when you really break it down, you realize, you know, what his struggle has been and where he's going to end up in a very short amount of time. In about a year or so, he's going to die. You know, you understand why he's so, you know, heavy on pushing this forward.
Yeah, I mean, he died at 39 years old.
Yep.
Sam Cooke died at 33 after being shot in a motel incident. Ali died at 74 from respiratory issues following Parkinson's and spinal stenosis. And Jim Brown is actually still alive. And it turns out he was in a bunch of films.
Yeah, he really started the movie career.
But yeah, but a lot of these guys died young, and you know, were killed young, not just died young.
I mean, you know, Cooke was murdered in 1964, I think. You know, he was, like I said, 33 years old at the height of his career. And it was horrible. And you know, his death, I don't know if you looked into it at all, but you know, it was a weird situation. You know, he was accused of trying to rape a woman, but at the same time, the story didn't add up, and it seemed like he had actually been robbed, and it was all planned by his manager to kill him and get the rights to his work. So, you know, we don't know really what happened there, but you know, unfortunately, his death is, you know, a very sad and misunderstood situation. So, you know, it's
if history tells us anything, it's that you can definitely accuse a black man of rape and have few questions asked. You know,
another thing Cooke said that I thought was really cool too is he said, you know, every living thing has a soul, and has a soul that can be tapped into. And then Malcolm asked Cooke if he's wasting time tapping into white people's souls. And, you know, not helping the cause. And, you know, Cooke brings up the fact that he's helping other black artists, right? He's like, you know, he's inspiring, you know, black kids to show them you can be successful and you can make money. And, you know, he's doing his own part in the cause.
And he's also mentoring independent artists,
right,
too.
Yep.
So like through his own label. So, you know, like he's doing, and Jim Brown, you know, kind of backs him up here, and he says financial freedom is what true freedom is.
Yes.
And, you know, Cooke giving himself and other black people financial freedom is advancing the cause in his own way. I think Malcolm, I'm not saying it verbatim, but he calls him out on saying like, you're gonna, be happy with the scraps and everything. And like, he basically says that once you get out, you live with the fact that you have forsaken your own people.
Yes.
Knowing that you're going to give them scraps once you make it. And I mean, that's an interesting accusation.
It is,
because I'm sure some people definitely do. You have your Lil Waynes, right? Go out supporting Trump and stuff like that.
Well, like Malcolm accuses Cook of perverting gospel music for white folks, right? That's one of the things he says. And then he says that you're a dancing monkey for white people. He said you just go out there, you perform your little song and dance for them, make them happy, and that's it. And you never bring up the struggle. And this actually sparked a conversation with my girlfriend. She was very much supporting of Malcolm X during this conversation. And she brought up the fact that like during the halftime show, I believe it was either last year or the year before, Shakira and J-Lo were there, right? And it was a big deal, right? It was like,
right they were.
They had two Hispanic, artists there, and they kind of had like the kids in cages thing kind of going on in the background. But she brought up the fact that
yeah, they kind of did.
This was during like kind of Black Lives Matter, right? And Colin Kaepernick had been fighting racial injustice in the NFL and had been blacklisted and lost his career basically. So they had asked a lot of black artists to perform during the halftime show, and they said no. But Shakira and J-Lo said yes. And my girlfriend said, it's fine if they want to perform there, but why didn't they show any kind of solidarity? They didn't have a Colin Kaepernick jersey. They didn't take a knee during, they went out there and they performed and they entertained all the white football folks. And, that kind of goes into like the Sam Cooke argument, is like, what are you going to use your platform to get the message out there? And I thought that was kind of interesting.
No, I mean, it is. And we're talking about the same woman who would later go on to sing at Biden's inauguration. I think.
Oh, did she really?
For the two of them, J-Lo? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Man, she sang at Biden's inauguration. And then in the middle of singing, was it the national anthem or was it America the Beautiful? It was one of those. She goes, "Let's get loud."
Oh,
at
God.
In the middle of it, which was hilarious, but also like, no, that's a good point. And that their halftime show pissed off people anyway.
It did.
So
which is
they might as well have, made a statement
right.
and then continued to piss people off for different reasons.
They're like, they spoke Spanish. It's like, oh, God.
Yeah. Well, also it was just, it was too sexy. It was way too sexy. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I remember, somebody who I worked for kind of was like, they're telling all the little girls the only way they have meaning is if they, or value is if they get up on screen and shake their asses. It's like, they didn't say that on any of the songs. If you got that, like if you feel less value because of them feeling more, like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, I agree. Like, it's just like, I mean, if that's what you're getting out of this, then, yeah, I guess you're not looking at the whole thing.
But so your girlfriend was more on the side of Malcolm, that if you do have a platform, if you are creating, you are, with great power comes great responsibility, basically.
Yeah, I mean, she feels like that white people, like, again, love a black person who goes out there and entertains them and keeps their mouth shut. And she feels like, you do become a dancing monkey for them. And, it's your kind of your responsibility for you and everyone like you to not just do whatever a white person wants and to go out there and speak your truth and speak your mind and, use that platform to deliver the message that you want, to help each other and help the cause.
And I love how she always brings up good points on the show despite never being on the show. That's probably
yeah. Well, point. Like I always watch, I watch a lot of the projects that we're reviewing, like with her, and like kind of pick her brain, and as a person of color, I kind of get like her perspective sometimes, and definitely helps ground me and open my eyes up to things that I normally wouldn't notice or think about.
Yeah, and same here, because while I've talked a lot about my ethnicity and my mixed ethnicity and kind of my own racial dysphoria on this podcast multiple times. But, that I also do approach a lot of this world from a white lens. So
Right,
I do also have to take those moments and step back and take a look at those things. But Ty, I know that only a second or two has passed, but I feel, whereas at the beginning of this podcast, I was like, I know Malcolm X kind of. I feel as if over 3 hours worth of movie based on his autobiography has just been downloaded into my head, much like in The Matrix, within a couple seconds.
Amazing.
I feel like there's been a little bit of research regarding the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad.
It's like we recorded this in 2 separate parts or something. That's incredible.
Almost as if we did have to take a break and come back to it at a later date. I can't tell you for sure, but what I can tell you is also there is a docu-series called Who Killed Malcolm X. So yes, as Ty said earlier, correcting me, it was the Nation of Islam. In Spike Lee's Malcolm X movie, he does posit that the CIA was also helping, and I'm sure there's other stuff to corroborate that.
I wouldn't doubt that for a second. I mean, they clearly wanted him dead and out of the picture for a while at that point, I'd say.
Yeah, and I did mention earlier, like, we don't want to say anything bad about the Nation of Islam and stuff, or or specifically Elijah Muhammad, because when it does come to communities of color, I do try to be a little more careful about the accusations I throw at them.
Of course.
But Malcolm X specifically did himself. So, and Elijah Muhammad said that he did that shit. Man. So fuck him. And that's what led to their break. And that's the point we see Malcolm X at in this movie. Which we have been talking about consistently and continuously with absolutely no breaks in between.
I mean, and think about that, though. Like, think about the mental strain that it has to have on him, right? Because he's already fighting against the American government and, in a way, white people as a whole, right? For the freedom and equality of his people, right? Of black people. And he's joined the Nation of Islam, and he's found, solidarity there, and it's given him, purpose in life. And then to find yourself at odds with the leader, and to the point where you're deciding to break off, and that they might try to kill you because it's a lifetime commitment. It's obviously going to put a lot of pressure on you, right? And I think that's why he's so easily agitated in this film. And I think that's understandable, if you really think about all the different factors that are playing in here.
Yeah, I think that Kemp Powers really took into account what was going on this year in Malcolm's life and really put that into the character. And it does make you think, like, if he did have the chance to meet up with all these people at the same time, would he be this way? And I really do think so, because at this time in his life, he's feeling excluded from the Nation of Islam, and he's a very lonely man. He has excluded all other so-called Negro leaders at the time, and cut them off. He has cut off all white people, or even the few white people who want to help him. And so to be in a room with people who actually do have pull, and who actually do have platforms, and actually know the black struggle, would you not try and quote unquote convert them at every step of the way, to quote X himself, by any means necessary? And that's what we see him doing in this film.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment I really enjoyed where I think we brought it up that this did actually happen to Cook. He heard Bob Dylan's "Blowing in the Wind," but in this one, in this film, Malcolm actually plays it for him. And he says, Malcolm X says, I just love those lyrics, especially in the beginning. How many roads must a man walk down before he can call him a man? It's as though he's asking, how much do the oppressed have to do before they can be recognized as human beings? And then he goes on to talk about how Dylan wrote that song with nothing to gain, right? Like he's a white guy. It doesn't gain him anything, but he speaks more of the black struggle than any song Cook has ever penned in his life. And he mentions that if being vocal is bad for business, why is Dylan's song gone higher on the pop charts than anything Cook has ever put out? And I thought that was a really powerful moment. He's saying, this white guy put out a song that speaks to our struggle. And it's such a vocal song for the oppressed, and it's doing so well, right? Like, people love it. Why won't you try and put something out there that speaks to that struggle too? And instead of putting out the fun poppy songs that you've been playing.
And Cook in this film is played by Leslie Odom Jr. Do you remember what you've seen him in before?
I don't.
he played Aaron Burr, sir, in Hamilton.
Oh, right, yes. I didn't know he was in Hamilton, but honestly, I watched so little of it that I didn't even
I thought you watched the whole thing.
No, I watched like a half hour of it, and then
really? I went through the whole thing, but it's interesting because, I'm sorry, did you just whisper to your cat, or did I hear a fucking voice in my ear?
You just heard a voice in your ear, man.
Tell me you listen to your cat. I swear. Tell me you whisper to it.
I mean, she whispers to me.
You fucking asshole. You went, get down, right? You said
I did. I really did. She's on my lap right now purring. I haven't said anything to her.
You didn't? Oh, boy. Oh,
Jesus.
boy. Oh, boy.
It's the ghost. It's the ghost. I've been watching a lot of ghost stuff.
Ooh, okay. I'm just going to keep this in here, guys.
That's hilarious.
So we can document my descent into insanity.
Yeah.
The brilliant mind, Michael Carbuccia. He was,
No, imagine if there's actually a ghost, but nobody believes you, and we all think you're going insane, and the ghost is just fucking with you the whole time.
Oh, my God. Great. Maybe it's Bran coming back in time. Dee is not a fan of this talk, so I'll stop because she knows it's actually possible.
Oh, boy.
But, hey, dude, brilliant minds, fun people. They're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
I'm not ableist. But yeah, so I find it interesting that he played a character who was his indifference was exaggerated so much in Hamilton. Like, that was a big thing. He said, talk less, smile more, never let them know what you're against or what you're for. And here we have Sam Cooke, who at the beginning it seems like he's doing this, that similar thing. He's fitting in with all the white people, and he's he's just kind of keeping to himself and trying to make it in this world. But he does make his message known. By the end of this film, and of course the change is going to come, premieres. Which
is awesome. It's amazing. Like I said, I think I mentioned earlier that he does say that he's already been working on that, right? Like it's not something that he decides to write now. It's just something that I think he finally gets the courage to perform. And I think that's what Malcolm's trying to accomplish here. He's trying to to motivate them and inspire them to use their platforms, because I think in a way, Malcolm realizes that out of the four of them, right? I think even Jim Brown says to him, like, you don't have a job. Malcolm X doesn't have a job. All he does is
he does say that,
right? Yeah. Like he just goes around, giving speeches and trying to motivate people, inspire them. But you have three guys here who are incredibly talented, who have giant platforms, who can probably do things that Malcolm will never be able to do. And I think he realizes if they, put as much effort into the struggle, into the fight as he does, what could they accomplish? They've already won so many people over. They have people's attention, and I think that's that's kind of where he's going with this. And my favorite scene, I know I told you this off camera, is here where Malcolm X.
Do we record
says,
video or?
I know, right?
I mean, no, you technically did. We weren't being recorded, so you're right. You did tell it to me off camera.
I think we did. Yeah, that's true. So, Malcolm X he's talking to the others because Cook storms out, right? He's so angry. And, Muhammad Ali and, or Cassius Clay at the time, and Jim Brown are both kind of like, oh, why'd you have to push him so much? And he said, like, you're his friend. And he says, well, I am his friend. And that's why I'm trying to give him a wake-up call. There's no more room for anyone. Not you, not me, not Jimmy, not Sam. No one to be standing on the fence anymore. Our people are literally dying in the streets every day. Black people are dying every day. And a line has got to be drawn in the sand, Jimmy. A line that says either you stand on this side with us or you stand over on that side against us, Cash. And I believe in that brother's potential too much to let him stand over on the other side. And I mean, that was my favorite scene in the movie. I thought it was
very powerful.
Yeah, very powerful stuff. And I think it just really, captures what Malcolm's trying to say. He just believes in Cook. That's why he's pushing him, right? He's being such a dick to him because he understands his talent and his potential and what he could accomplish. And I think that's what, Malcolm X saw in people. He wanted to push, black people to rise to the occasion and, live up to their full potential. And, he just cares so much because, again, black people are dying, just like today, right? We had Black Lives Matter. We were protesting in the streets last year because to this day, black people are still dying in the streets every single day. And it has to end at some point. How do you end it? And I think, the white savior thing is not the answer. Black people have to have to kind of take back the power themselves a bit. And I think that's what Malcolm was trying to do.
I do think that looking at the whole of Malcolm's life, which we will be doing next week,
possibly, or I mean, that's up to you.
I won't go into it much here because we will be doing it next week. We will be covering Spike Lee's Malcolm X. And I'll mention the whole schedule of this month's movies, just that way, if you do want to watch them in advance, all of you listeners will be able to do that. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's great.
But to keep it as short as possible, Malcolm did come from the trap of white America, from trying to be a white man and fit in this world, to getting caught in drugs and crime and other substance abuse issues, and ended up being in prison. And that's where he was found. He was he was like the Mustang that has to be broken to reach its potential. That's where he was saved, where he learned about Islam, and where he learned to accept himself and love the black version of himself. And he became one of the most iconic men in history, one of the most iconic people to ever walk the planet. And I mean, I'll put it this way, but when he went on his pilgrimage to Mecca, he had to stand before them and say what his tenets of Islam were. This is after he broke with the Nation of Islam, so he very much create his own identity again, which in this movie he's in the midst of, and be declared like an actual Muslim who's worthy of pilgrimage. Like he. Wow. He realized his own potential and is so frustrated with these other people who have so much potential, and he sees them losing themselves to substances also. Like, he doesn't like when Muhammad is drinking and Muhammad Ali, when Cassius
to be specific.
When Cassius is drinking and stuff, and Jim has to tell him, he's like, let it go. Oh, by the way, did you know that Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a couple of other black athletes were actually called to, I want to say intimidate, but it was more like convince Muhammad Ali to join the draft and go to Vietnam, and he still chose not to.
Wow.
Yeah, like they sat with him for hours in real life and spoke with him, and they were like, listen, we served, you served too, blah, blah, and he was like, nope, and he didn't do it, so.
He stood up for it, like... I forgot the direct quote, but he's, it's something like, he doesn't want to go there and kill other people, right? For a country that doesn't even respect him. And
yeah, he said no Vietnamese person ever called me the N-word. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's, and I think that he's right on the money there, so, oh man. So, one of the other things I really liked about this film was, and I know you mentioned you really enjoyed Brown's performance, right? The actor who played Jim Brown. And he was kind of low key, he was definitely way more low key than everyone else in this film, and the way he played it. But he had some really, really good lines, after this really like, emotional outburst by Malcolm. Muhammad or Cassius Clay goes to follow and find Cook, and at this point it's just Jim Brown and Malcolm sitting there, and they're kind of going back and forth, and Brown mentions how it's the light-skinned brothers who are the most outspoken.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up.
Oh yeah, he's like, how light-skinned folks sometimes light-skinned folks like to give it harder to dark-skinned folks than white people do. And he asked Malcolm if his pushing is actually about trying to prove something to white people or to himself, or to black people. And that's colorism, right? It's a great idea that he brings that up. I love that he brings that up because unfortunately, even amongst people of color, sometimes you can be prejudiced against someone who's darker skinned than you, and Malcolm is light skinned, right, compared to Jim Brown.
Yeah, we have spoken about colorism, not at length though, but it does originate to, and they also talk about it in next week's movie. It does go back to the origins of slavery, as everything does in this country, really, or most things do. That there were the house Negroes and the field Negroes, and based on who was who were raped by the owners and ended up having light skinned kids, and those light skinned kids would end up working in the house and kind of kind of develop this this Stockholm syndrome nature with their masters, and also because the way that they were treated much better than those in the field. That there was this resentment that that still kind of carries over to today, and I don't think it's necessarily because our ancestors didn't get along. It's more so because America accepts you because of your light skin more than it accepts me because of my dark skin.
Right.
That's a very, very real thing, and I think it is important that Jim Brown brings it up.
Yeah, I agreed. And I think during this conversation, there are some other interesting things that get brought up. Malcolm, it kind of, to me, the viewpoint that Jim Brown kind of brings up is that Malcolm views everyone kind of as a weapon for the cause, right? Like, it almost comes to the point where, like, he stops viewing them as individuals and just as, tools to push the cause. And, whether he's wrong or right, I do think in a lot of ways that kind of plays out in the way these conversations are going. And that's, he seems to care very much about that. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take as well. And, Brown said he has a lot of great quotes. He even says about white folks, right? That a lot of white folks love to pat themselves on the back for not being cruel to black people. And he says sometimes he hates them more than the rednecks that get it all out there. Kind of referring to almost like white liberals, right?
Oh, definitely referring to white liberals.
It's like, just because they treated you kind of nice, they think that they're some sort of hero. And like he said, like, he hates it almost worse than the full on racist, because at least right away where they stand. But the white liberals and ones who try to, like, make it seem like they're so great, and you just don't know what they're going to do next because they're trying to play it, behind your back. They're going to do something, and I thought that was that was great.
Yeah, well, I voted for the black president. I voted for.
I would have voted for Obama a third time, right?
Exactly, right? Jordan Peele knows it, but I voted for, like, one of the most diverse cabinets in history. I voted against racism because I
have black
for
friends.
Biden. Yeah,
right. It's like the typical shit that you hear from them, and it's just like, it doesn't mean that what you're doing is okay. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to face your own inner racism, right? I mean, like, I think we've discussed this on the podcast before, that unfortunately all white people, have a systematic racism in them. It's just it's indoctrinated into us for so many years. Whether you realize it or not, you have to consciously remember these things and remember the things that you say and the things that you think. And, we have to do that every single day. We have to struggle with that because it's the right thing to do, right? To break out of that system. And, if you don't admit that you have it there, I don't think you can ever truly not be a racist.
Yeah, and that's an uncomfortable conversation to have with anyone, let alone yourself.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, sometimes you might think things and only you thought them.
Right.
And even so, you're like, oh shit, that was a little problematic, or shit, that was outright racist.
I've been there.
And I never have. I'm a perfect person, but I know that you specifically. No, it is definitely it's definitely happened to me, and I would take it a step further and say every American. If you were born on American soil, then you have some form of white supremacy in you, because it is in everything. It is in your ads, where we have black people in servant roles in, with Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben and all that other shit. It's in, it's in your, well, I mentioned your, your ads and stuff. It's in your music. It's in your movies. We talk about how important media is, and, whether or not, like, you are a person of color, you still grow up with the lens that white people are always the good guys. White people are always the right ones. I've seen more people of color as criminals on TV, and you may not have those opinions, but they're in the back of your head. Like, it is something that does have to be deprogrammed. I do think that also at this point, while Malcolm is trying to kind of distance himself from the Nation of Islam, it is still very much a part of him. And the more you look at it, the more you see it is closer to like a Scientology sort of thing. It's less about religion and more about control and money.
Yeah.
I think he still has the habits of using those tools, because I think that's what he's trying to do is that he's taking Muhammad Ali, he's taking he's taking Jim, he's taking Sam. He wants to convert them all, he wants to radicalize them all, and there are different ways to do everything, but the only way he knows how is to be like, listen, you have to be used as a tool against, or as a weapon, as Jim says, against white supremacy. But is that not also taking freedom from black folks? Is that not also taking away their choice of how they want to fight the struggle?
Yeah, and I think Jim kind of says that, right? Like, he doesn't want to be a part of that fight because it's just not what he wants to do, right? Like, he wants to be in control of his own life and make his own decisions. And again, this is just another way of being controlled.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I would say that this is a film about that struggle of activism. It's about self-doubt and just trying to realize where you are in the world. And I've had this thought before, and to all of you out there that are having it right now, the am I doing enough? Keep thinking that.
Yeah.
Because the second you go, you know what, I'm doing enough, that's when you're not doing enough anymore.
Right.
And
it could be complacent, right?
Exactly. And everybody has their own part to play, as we've said before. So if it's supporting black-owned businesses with your dollar, then that's your part to play. If it's, you being able to get out there and protest, then that's your role to play. If it's you being able to, expose white supremacists online or whatever it happens to be, I think that's kind of the point of this. And, it was shortly after I had earned my first degree black belt. I had been having a lot of doubts about myself. Don't even talk about the second degree. But it was, I'd gone into the dojo and I'd had my lesson with my sensei, and I asked her, like, I don't feel confident about anything I know anymore. Like, I've spent, however many years training, and I'm doubting every single thing I know. I'm doubting if I know how to do these moves right or blah, blah, blah. And she said, that's how you know you're a black belt. Because you don't believe that you're good enough. That's what it takes. It takes you always wanting to do more.
Yeah, you got to strive for better, right? I mean, the common thing I think that a lot of leftists say, and we've said it on this podcast, is don't go to brunch, right? Like, don't just forget about the struggle. If things suddenly seem a little better, that's great, but keep pushing. I think keep pushing because it can be even better, right? And making sure that these struggles, that we remember that there's people in this country that are constantly fighting for their lives, really. You gotta always remember that, and any little thing you can do to help that, I think is really important. So yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Now, everybody did do their own part. I mentioned before how Muhammad Ali, not the Prophet Muhammad, went on to have like a speaking series, and he became a known figure for protesting the Vietnam War and for his activism. Obviously, Malcolm X has left his footprint. Jim Brown, was a great character in this movie. That's about as much as I know of him.
Obviously he broke some barriers in the NFL. I think that's probably his big accomplishment. And then he became kind of a Western hero in films and stuff like that.
Yeah, and obviously Sam sought to start sending a message through his music. But what I want to ask you, Ty, is, do you think that those were enough? Because the problems that Malcolm felt were so dire at the time and pressing are still happening today. So does it really make a difference? I know this is a very difficult question. I don't have an answer to it. That's why I'm just putting it out there to you and also to the listeners. What do you think? Do you think that that form of less direct action, I'll sing about my struggle instead of openly talking about, instead of openly talking about it and holding a meeting and preaching to billions of people, or marching, on protests, or carrying guns on the Capitol or whatever. I think that was the Black Panthers at one point.
Yeah.
But would these problems still exist today had the people with the platforms taken a more direct action? I don't think there is a right answer to that, right? We don't really know. You can look at today again, right? Colin Kaepernick, he took a stand, and Black Lives Matter did some good, but at the same time,
have we really fundamentally changed the system? Have we broken this cycle of oppression? You know, have we dismantled systematic racism in America? Absolutely not. So, you know, it still continues today. I think we can't, you can't be lulled into, you know, into stopping the struggle. I mean, you know, obviously Malcolm X's death was a blow to the movement, but it didn't end there, right? You know, you still had Martin Luther King, who would die for several more years. And then, you know, what happened when he died? There were riots, right? There were riots in the streets, and it finally got the government to start actually doing something. And then I think, you know, it kind of stopped a little bit there, right? You know, like, you know, once we start to get something, I feel like people subside and they step back again. And you can't take that pressure off. I think you just got to keep the pressure on, and, you know, no matter how you do it, whether it's, you know, singing songs of oppression, or, you know, taking to the streets, or, you know, the Black Panther Party, whatever it might be. I just think you got to keep that pressure going. And I mean, you got to hope you can change the system eventually, right? I mean, we have to keep fighting for it. And there's so many different, I think, ideologies for how to do that. And there is no right answer. But I think the more united we are in agreeing on, you know, that we're going to try, and that's probably the best we can do.
I think that's a good point. You know, just keep up the pressure as much as you can in whatever way you can. You know, don't get complacent, and don't get comfortable, because, you know, even if it is just taking a knee during the national anthem, how many people did that fucking piss off?
Right.
And how many people had to turn on the news and hear the words racial injustice? And even if it's not going to change their minds, it's in their heads. And you know what? Now they're uncomfortable.
Yep.
And I would like to quote my amazing cousin, who will be on the podcast this month. She said, if I have to be uncomfortable because of racism, we can all be uncomfortable because of racism.
I love that.
So guess what? You know, even if it is just posting every fucking day on your Facebook and pissing off your conservative relatives or whatever it is, you know, just put it out there. Don't stay quiet, and don't get comfortable. And I know it's exhausting. You know, Ty had to text me and say there's an insurrection at the Capitol, because I was like, fuck the world, I don't want to know anything. And, you know, I was taking a little break. I
was like, holy shit, they're storming that Capitol building, dude. You're like, what? Huh? You're like fucking Jared Leto when he came out of
he was like, what? There's COVID?
He's like, COVID? What the hell who's that?
I'm like Morty, and you're Rick. You just come, Morty, I know you were trying to relax, but Morty, they're storming the Capitol.
Oh man. But you know what? I think educating people is so important too. You know, if you can change the mind of one person, I think that's incredible. I mean, I'm going to use myself as an example again, and, you know, maybe you know, it's a little embarrassing to say, but when I first dated, the first year I dated my girlfriend, again, you know, she is Hispanic, she's a person of color, and I don't even know how it got brought up, but, you know, she brought up you know, slavery, and I think reparations and things like that. And I remember I actually said to her, I was just like, well, like, you know, white people today never owned slaves. Like, I never owned a slave. So, like, you know, I don't have to feel sorry for that. I didn't do it. You know, and that was really my viewpoint. I really sincerely believe that. I was like, it's over, you know, like like slavery's over. So, like, why do I have to feel bad about it all the time?
Well, it's funny you say that's your viewpoint, because I'm not sure if you ever thought of that originally, though. Well, no, but like my thought is, at some point that made its way into your head.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that was ever put there originally, though. Like it came from social media, or it came from somewhere.
Oh, of course, someone it had to come from somewhere or someone.
Exactly, and that's like that ideology. But you know, because you're not that guy.
No, and when we discussed it, you know, we've discussed it, you know, ad nauseum, and like. It made me really uncomfortable, actually. The conversation made me really uncomfortable, and I was getting really pissed off and bothered by it. And, you know, she kind of pressed the issue, not even just like during that one conversation, but like over time. And like kind of explained to me a little bit more of like, you know, how that, you know, how slavery impacted, you know, black people to today, and how the systematic racism of our country impacted people today, how it hasn't given them the same opportunities, how it's, so many communities are still affected because of that, and how, like, we never made it right. We never made it right. So, my viewpoint today is a total, 180. I do agree with reparations. I agree, that slavery has not been made right by black people in this country, whether they experienced it directly or not. They had family that were slaves, and so I guess my point is, my view has changed so much. My eyes have truly been open to that, and I'm still learning. I don't know everything about it. We watch these movies, we talk about it, I think, in part to educate ourselves as much as anyone listening, and it's so vital to do that, and to come to terms with these things and have those difficult conversations with yourself and with others, and get to a point where they start to understand. I mean, it took her doing that to me 6 years ago, and over the last
doing that for you,
yeah.
Well, you were like, I'm still pissed off. She said it the way she said it. She did it to me.
Yeah, right. And then, but that it was a chain reaction, because then, like, I mentioned my stepfather on this podcast who said some really racist shit, like really bad stuff, and I've called him out on it, multiple times, and eventually it led to some really good conversations, where he finally said to me, he's like, oh, I didn't realize black people felt that way when the police drove by, because he saw a video of a kid hiding from a cop when he was just playing in the street, and then, to my parents understanding why Colin Kaepernick actually took a knee. They didn't get it back then. So, just, I think having those conversations and like you said, being uncomfortable is part of it, but it really can pay off, and you can really, really learn something yourself, and you can teach other people, and I think that's going to be key to kind of breaking out of this cycle eventually, hopefully.
Yeah, for a second I thought you were going to say, and my stepdad said, I didn't realize black people felt.
Oh my God! No,
dude. But no, that's a great point about just changing one person's mind and just the difference that makes. And this movie is also just about the difference one person can make. Like, let's say you change one person's mind, maybe that person has kids or something, or maybe that person knows somebody and they go on to change somebody else's mind, or if they do have kids, then all those future generations, hopefully, will have a similar mindset, if not even more progressive than their parent, because. For as good as we try to be, like, we still have our own biases, and then hopefully we can raise the next generation without it if we do choose to do that.
Exactly. Yep.
But the power of one person is brought up by Malcolm when he mentions this time that he went to a show that Sam Cooke did. And at this show, the guy who went on before him kicked out the cord, and Sam had no instrumentals, no vocals, no speakers, no nothing. His band left him. The crowd was going insane. Malcolm was in the back getting ready to go because the crowd was getting antsy. And Sam just starts stomping his foot, and he makes a beat for everyone to kind of sing along to, and to step along to, and to clap along to. And he's able to sing to them that way. And this was this beautiful moment to me, because it really did represent this, this kind of idea that I think people want leadership,
right?
First off, but I think also we all share a similar rhythm, and we all want to be a part of something. You just have to make sure you're singing the right song.
Yeah, Malcolm says the cook can move mountains without lifting a finger. I thought that was a great line. Just about how he could command an audience just with song, just with his own music and his own beat. And there's also a line that Muhammad Ali says to him when he goes to meet up with him. He gets in the car and he says to him, he's like, black people want power, and you have it, but you take it for granted. That's what he says to him. And I think a lot of this movie is actually about, I guess, like Cook realizing the power that he has to enact change, and actually be a greater force for this than he has been. I just have two more quotes that I really liked. Brown says at one point, "We're all just gladiators, Cash, with our ruler sitting up there in his box, giving us the thumbs up or the thumbs down. I don't want no damn ruler." I thought that was great, and I think that is kind of how most of us feel, right? We don't want these people, telling us how to live our lives and what to do, and whether it's you're a black person being oppressed by racism, or you're economically oppressed by the 1%. I thought that was a great line.
And for black people specifically, I think he means, we're all entertainers trying to just keep our head above water. If we entertain the white man, we get to live another day.
Right.
And, and to your point, I think, to the working class, it's more about we are all out there fighting that capitalist struggle every fucking day. Oh, the job market, is it competitive? Is it not competitive? And, we're only valuable for as long as we can produce, for as long as we can provide labor and produce capital. And that's it. So it does work on a few levels. We are those gladiators just trying to keep the upper class happy, if it be through entertainment or through capital.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed. And the other quote, the last quote I had was, it's actually the way the film ended. It says, it is a time for martyrs now, and if I am to be one, it will be for the cause of brotherhood. That's the only thing that can save this country. And that's actually a quote from Malcolm X from February 19th, 1965, 2 days before he was assassinated.
Yeah, and I think you see in this film a lot in next week's, but especially in this one too, that he was very much on edge, and kind of knew that it was coming, and you got to wonder, do a lot of people like that throughout their lives, do they feel like that too? When we I brought up Hamilton before, and there's a whole song in that musical about, his wife says, "Why do you write like you're running out of time?" Like, like he spent so much of his life working, like he would never, ever have enough time to finish his life's work. And, because, he knew he would die young. And,
right.
I don't know, you just got to wonder, does everybody who leaves an impact, do they think that way? Do they think, I only have so much time to make my mark?
I mean, I think it's possible. I feel that way. And just about things, I'm an amateur filmmaker, and there's times where I'm like, man, I've spent too much time not working on movies or not writing. How much time do I have left to actually do something worthwhile and worth remembering? So I think, especially when you're dealing with the struggles of an entire people and you're trying to make an impact there, I could definitely see people feeling like that.
And another thing I like about the way that Malcolm is portrayed in this film is that he's shown to be a lot more vulnerable than the Malcolm we see through like interviews and speeches. We see a very tough exterior, but here with these men, we do see a more vulnerable version. And once again, this is a play. It is technically fictional. It is something that has never happened. But I think it's a great look into the mind, and he left behind an autobiography. He left behind a lot of words, so it's probably not that difficult to get an accurate representation of who he was as a person throughout different points in his life. But I did like seeing that more sensitive version. I like seeing a more sensitive version of all these characters. They were all real fucking people, but I like seeing a sensitive version of all these men, because it's atypical for us as a society and in popular media to let black men be vulnerable. And and I think we even see that with them in this movie, that they don't know how to feel when they're vulnerable. They just act out in anger.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a man thing in general, but yeah, I appreciated some performances in this film. I mean, I appreciated all of them at different points. Part of me felt like some of them were kind of like caricatures, like impressions a little.
Yeah.
And just the fact that you can definitely tell it was based off of a play. There isn't really a lot in the means of setting. Obviously the time is very tense, but
it's four guys in a room, and
it's four guys in a room,
it's a very
and then they go to the roof
kind of move.
And they go to the room, Then they go to a store, but back to the room. So, it's tough to translate that onto film, but I think that the dialogue and the characters really do, they carry a heavy load in keeping us engaged that way. So
yeah, I think overall it's pretty successful. And just piggybacking off your point about seeing them in a more vulnerable state, I think a lot of times with icons like these, right? I mean, Malcolm X is legendary. I think you sometimes forget. When you learn about them or think about them, that they're people, right? Like they seem so powerful or so so larger than life that you forget at the same time that they're a person just like you or me, and they definitely had to have insecurities and doubts, and no matter how strongly they portrayed themselves to the public, that there is a side of them that we don't get to see, right? That maybe their family saw, their friends saw, or only they saw, right? There's only a side of you that and I think it's hard to remember that with icons, as giant as Muhammad Ali and as Malcolm X.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take a look at a 22-year-old athlete now, if they came out talking the way that that Cassius Clay was talking at the time, you would be like, this is ridiculous. Like, right. This guy is so overconfident. He must never have a bad day in his life. And, and we do get to see that more vulnerable portrayal in this film that, he's actually unsure about a lot of things, as a 22-year-old, I think, would and probably should be.
Yeah, I didn't know shit at 22, man.
Yeah. Thought I did.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, but that being said, that was One Night in Miami, folks. Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
Absolutely.
Next week, we are going to be reviewing Malcolm X, a Spike Lee joint, starring Denzel Washington. The week after that, we're going to be doing Judas and the Black Messiah. That is going to be a film that's going to be released by Warner Brothers on HBO Max for streaming release. So if you're able to cop an HBO Max account, that's what we're going to be reviewing. And on that episode, we will have my cousin. She is a Latina queen who works with vulnerable populations, doing social work and helping them with mental health issues. And our last film of the month is going to be Antebellum. We have a special insider guest on this episode. Not only is he the editor of our own short film, Great Power, which will happen at some point, and it's happened, but it's going to keep happening. But also he worked on the film Antebellum, so we're going to have an awesome insider perspective, BTS behind the scenes peek. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this whole month. I can't wait to have my cousin on. I can't wait to review Malcolm X with you. It's going to be great.
I mean, it's obviously very exciting to have a guest. I think it's always gives a little more to talk about and to change things up. So I'm excited to have two guests this month. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to fucking edit all those tracks. Guys, you can do the most work for us by just recommending this podcast to another person who you think would like it, or to a person who you think would hate it. Maybe you might change their mind, and hopefully they'll leave us a 5-star review saying that we're liberal communist trash. Or you can leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Social media, fucking Google Politipop Podcast, okay? You can find any of our accounts. This one's for us, Ty. Forget it, all right? I'm not selling out to the man anymore, okay? Patreon probably gonna shut that down too, unless we have a patron or two on it. All right? Hey, honestly, even then, I'll give you the fucking money back. But that being said, yeah, find our social media, go to our Patreon if you want, leave us a review. That would be fantastic. And also thank you so much for listening, and thanks to Antonia Chava, as always, for logo design. For the Politipop Podcast, I have been Mike Booch.
I've been Ty.
And remember, no matter what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're fucking thinking, apparently, because we all got something going on in there.
Yep.
Remember to never stop thinking, never stop learning, because you can always grow, and nothing is as it seems. So please remember to read between the lines.
And scene.
I like that. Nothing is as it seems. Does that sound like a QAnon sign-off? Or does that... I mean, if we get the listens, whatever, a bunch of Q people, I'll be like, what will really piss off the libs? If we fucking help people who are experiencing homelessness, that'll get them. Just start leading my own Q branch. I'll be like, guys, we're upgrading to R. That's going to be our thing. We're R and on. Nothing is as it seems. What do I mean? I mean, there's always more to the picture. Read between the lines. All right, cool.